TIG welding is one of the hardest and highest paying processes out there, and these things will help you learn it a lot quicker. First things first is cleanliness. Makes a good weld, strong weld, so we're gonna wanna clean the inside and outside of pipe and plate. You wanna get all the mill scale off. You wanna get all the grease, oil, dirt, all that stuff off of there. It's the key to a quality weld. You have to be clean. Next thing we see a lot of is tungsten grind angle. A lot of people when they're first starting out TIG welding, they'll wanna grind their tungsten this way, and it needs to be going towards the tip of the tungsten. All your grind angles need to be going that way. It will cause unstable arc if it is going this way instead of straight towards the tip. You wanna make sure you don't grind your tungsten too shallow or too steep because you won't have a lot of control of the puddle. The next thing I wanna talk about is people messing up their tungsten. Touching the tungsten to the base metal during a TIG weld, and what that's gonna do is it's going to leave some crap or junk on the end of your tungsten, and it's gonna affect weld quality. And with TIG, that's not what you want. You wanna be nice and clean. You want your tungsten ground very sharply every time. If you touch it once, you're gonna have to switch it out. I recommend having a bunch of tungsten on standby when you're first learning because you're gonna go through a lot of them. One of the most common problems I see is introducing the rod too soon into the puddle. So when you start up a TIG torch, the tungsten is what melts the base metal, and the filler rod is what goes into the molten puddle. After you fire up, you want to let the base metal warm up before you add the filler rod. Another important thing is keeping your distance between your tungsten and your base metal to a certain height. If it's too high, it's going to cause a lot of problems, and if it's too short, it might be close enough to touch, and that will ruin your tungsten. So if you have too much height, it's gonna direct your heat outwards and not into the metal. And also with your filler rod, it's gonna ball your filler rod back. You want it to be close in towards the plate to be able to melt the base metal and your filler wire. Hovering above the plate about 1/16 of an inch as you progress. And that's the hardest part of TIG, is learning that consistency of keeping everything the same height. You just wanna keep the tungsten as close to the puddle without touching it as you can. The one thing we see students do when they move on to TIG is they get two things wrong, and that would be body positioning and where their hand is on this TIG torch. And it's kind of a hit or miss thing. You can put it really anywhere, but you don't want to be over the gas knob. One thing is, if you have that gas knob like this and you put your hand over it, it could potentially shut off your backing gas, which you don't want. So you want to have a nice, comfortable grip on the torch. You don't want to tighten your hand too much because that will lock up everything, and it's hard to move the torch when your hand is locked up like that. So we try to tell people to lightly grip it, and I usually put one finger behind the outside, and that will kind of force you to not squeeze on the TIG torch. Another thing you don't want to do is grab the torch up here high on the cup, because if you picture you have a weld right here, your hand is going to get very hot on that cup. That cup's going to heat up, and it's going to burn your hands. For tips on walking the cup, what I did early on learning TIG welding was I found a TIG torch. If your company has one, you can get one. I like using this amplified one. It's a nice torch. You can use anything you want really, but this one works pretty good for, just taking everywhere with you. But what I did was disconnect the gas line and the power cable, and you take that with you, and you can practice that on anything. You can walk that on whatever you want. On a table, on a nightstand, while you're eating dinner, you can use it anywhere you want to. If you really want to learn to weld, go to applytoweld.com. We'll see you there.